Hello, everybody, and welcome back to One Step Ahead Practical Foresight for Uncertain Times. Today, I am so pleased to introduce you to my dear friend and colleague, Vasheti Quiros. Vasheti is the CEO of a well balanced CEO and helps mission driven nonprofit women leaders build predictable revenue and operational stability without burning out. Raise your hand if that sounds really good to you to have both predictable revenue without burning out. I know I would, so I'm very excited to hear from Vasheti today. As a nonprofit growth strategist and expert fundraiser, she works with executive directors and boards to strengthen fundraising systems, stabilize internal operations, and build the leadership infrastructure required for sustainable growth. So, this means that with what we can do here is we can replace reactive scrambling and replace it with a revenue strategy that doesn't depend on constant urgency, which is, oh my gosh, look at the bank account. We need to call some donors. That is not a strategy. So, welcome, Vasheti. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Kendall. I'm so excited to be here, and thank you so much for that lovely introduction.
Great. And is there anything that it was not in the introduction that we want to underscore for our listeners today?
Well, the only thing that I would love to include is that I have also co-authored and participated in co-authoring a book called Women Who Lead, Volume 2, that is
Great.
available on Amazon or also available through my
Nice.
website at wellbalancedceo.com. So that is something that I had an opportunity to participate in. It's my first anthology, and I'm really looking forward to expanding that to my own book. So I would just add that in because it really highlights 13 stories from individual authors on women in leadership and their resilience and stories of leadership and challenges that they have overcome. So I would highly recommend that book
Oh,
to anybody who's interested.
wonderful. So it's leadership stories, not just designated for a nonprofit, but for
Yes.
everybody running a business or running a division or a dream, I say.
Absolutely. It is not designated just for nonprofits. It's
Great,
women in leadership, all
great.
different types of leadership. And it's women who have undergone difficult journeys in their leadership and how they've overcome them. So there's wonderful stories of resilience throughout this book.
Mm. So that's a great place for us to start because I would love to know what drew you specifically to help nonprofit women leaders in comparison to sort of all leaders, because I have personally experienced your coaching as a for-profit leader, although some days, when I'm not in my strategy, I can feel like a nonprofit leader myself going, what am I doing here? You have helped me tremendously. And so what specifically resonates to help this amazing group of leaders out there who need help, nonprofit leaders?
Yeah, so one, I have worked in the nonprofit sector. I've been exposed to the nonprofit sector for about a little over 20 years. So my experience, first of all, my lived experience is very um long, and I have a lot of lived experience that I can tap into. And that a lot of my experience has shown me, what it means to move around in the nonprofit space. And as I have grown in my own leadership as a nonprofit women leader, I have seen firsthand what women go through in the nonprofit sector, and how we are supported, and how the challenges that we have to go through to thrive, to get our organizations to be sustainable. And there are definitely dips and valleys within the nonprofit sector that you have to go through. And I want to say, I'm not going to quote a specific percentage, but I want to say about if you want to, like 3/4 of leaders in the nonprofit sector are women. And so a good chunk of the leadership within the nonprofit sector is made up of women. And when you look at how the leadership in nonprofit sectors are supported and how the nonprofit sector itself is established, you are reporting to a board of directors. And that board of directors, depending on how well they are informed and engaged in your program, a lot of times that is dependent on how much support that executive director has. So, in my experience and in my awareness, I am well aware that the majority of the time, the boards are not as aware of the work that's being done with the boots on the ground, say so to say, or aware of the planning, or aware of the intensity, or aware of the specific needs. So there is a lot of education that I think boards could really benefit from. And then as there's the engagement, there's additional engagement that I think boards could really that the teams in the nonprofit sector could really benefit from that board support.
So is that something then specifically that you'll work with the executive directors on in terms of how to design kind of a forward looking agreement contract as a board member of what do we really need from you, and really making that clear as you set the table for onboarding that board? Here's what we really need from you in order for you to be successful.
Absolutely. One of the things that I do work with my clients on is giving them the confidence to feel like they have that seat at the table. So that is really something very important that I had to work through, that I want my clients to feel the confidence to work through, so that they can have those negotiation skills that are so important when you are coming to a boardroom and when you are seated at that table, to have that confidence to negotiate and advocate for yourself, because you are the main person that you will invest in and that you should be advocating for. And so this is really what I encourage my clients to build, that confidence muscle, so that they can advocate for their team, advocate for their resources, advocate for themselves, because that is really where they're going to continue to grow and gain that sustainability for the programs in their organization, and as well as getting that buy-in from their board members.
Yeah. Okay, so is one of the areas that you help them with is to know their own story and what drew them to the work, and then also a way to leverage those stories to incentivize or inspire or influence the board to also join them in, say, fundraising efforts
Yes.
or partnership efforts.
Yeah, so perfect segue into, I'll
Great.
talk about, I have a 90-day nonprofit
Oh, cool.
accelerator program. And this program actually covers all of those things. One of the first, it's broken down into 3 segments. And one of the first segments is that board activation. But really, the first part of that is really going in and making sure you define your North Star and really what your overall goals are. And so you are starting from that foundation. And so you are making sure that you are really going back and not, I'm going to use that word that you brought up at the beginning, not starting from a place of urgency, but going back and revisiting that vision and your own mission. And so you can create a place where you're looking ahead and thinking back at what do you actually want for yourself and for your organization. And so you can, make sure that that is well established, that you can adequately uh, uh, advocate for that, that you can adequately negotiate when you are talking not only to board members, but to donors. So this goes beyond the board at this point. This goes when you're speaking to donors, when you're speaking to any of your constituents in the community, you want to be able to be so confident about your goals and your mission. So that's really the first phase. And then you go and you go for a training portion where you really are training your board in these ways that they can support you. So then the second part is really looking at how you engage your board. And then you're looking at some ways that you can tighten up your fundraising and really do some how you can speak to your donors, because that is, I think, where we've gotten lost a little bit, is how we are communicating with our donors in the specific donor outreach. So there is a segment in the middle where we go through ways that we can communicate specifically with donors, go through donor outreach and donor segmentation. And then in the last piece of the 90 days, we go through and setting up what I call systems of sovereignty, where you create systems to support your, not only systems of structure that is necessary for the programs that you have in your own nonprofit, but also that support your own sovereignty so that you have space for your energy as well. So it
Mm.
really is a comprehensive program that covers the board piece, the fundraising piece, and then the systems of sovereignty and the structure piece.
Yeah, that sounds so robust and meaningful. I imagine people are really taking away a lot from it.
Yes,
Yeah,
we're kicking off the June cohort. Well, we are kicking off the July cohort, at the end of July. So we kick off
at the end
every
of July.
month. This is actually a
Great.
rolling program too. So
Nice.
we welcome people into this
Mm.
program at any time.
Great to know. All right. And as you're helping them specifically with donors, because I know that's a lot of the folks that I'm working with, which is I reserve a handful of seats for nonprofit leaders. And that whole idea of getting those systems of sovereignty and getting, what I call moving their donor relations program to a donor delight program where people are
Yeah.
delighted to participate and to give. What kind of trends are you seeing out there for people, for our listeners right now who are, we're all in this uncertain time right now. The economy is not doing as well for everybody. Inflation is up. And so what are some folks, what are they saying right now? What are trends that you're seeing in terms of the donor part, the donor relations?
Well, what I am seeing is that donors, I think there's a blurring of the lines really right now between what a fundraiser does and a strategist does. And so that is really where I really think that the fundraisers right now really need to be recognized for the strategy that they are providing, because ultimately the donors right now, they are really curious about what is happening with their money. They are not, and so this is, I think, the trends that I'm seeing is that they are wanting, they're very, um, they want to understand the theory of change. They want to understand the philosophy, the organizational health. They want to know much more about the organization, about what the through line of their donation, much more about the outcomes and about what is happening with their dollars than they did before. they actually want a seat at the table. The donors want a seat at the table. They want to be part of the process. And
Mm,
so this is something that if a fundraiser can really understand and recognize how donors really want to be pulled into part of this planning process and really look at donors more as partners rather than, like, say, clients or prospects, and really look
mm.
at them as how they can, really start partnering with their donors versus how they are just serving them. I think that's what I'm seeing, is that they're much more interested in the nuts and bolts and how, and they want to be involved.
So you're saying a good idea then is higher touch points, more warm outreaches to your donors to let them know not just on email where their donations are going, but also what are some of those stories that they can share. Just, hey, I just wanted to catch you to let you know that we deployed $100,000 to this group, or and here's what happened as a result of it. That
Yeah,
kind of thing.
what and I would even go so far as to consider maybe a donor advised committee.
Hmm.
So, where we have in the past, we've developed internal committees. I would probably suggest a, committee of, how, we've all, hopefully know what focus groups are, right?
Yeah.
So maybe something along the lines of like a donor style focus group, where you can pull donors in. And that, I think, would be so valuable to be able to get donor feedback in that way. And from a donor perspective, they would feel so involved in that process, and they would feel like their voices are being heard. They are part of, they would feel like they are actually part of the organizational process if they are being brought in for a focus group and being asked specific questions that are going to enact change.
Mm.
So I would think of things like focus group, specific surveys that will drive change. So any type of enhanced type of communication that will leave the donor feeling like they have made an impact within the organization.
Okay, so I love that. And do you find, is there resistance to that? And what do you think gets in the way of saying, yeah, we really need to treat our donors as our partner versus just sort of a ATM, to
I would say that sometimes there could be resistance from people who have, um who aren't wanting to be fully transparent. And at that point, you really want to then uncover why there is an issue with, not wanting to be transparent. So you want to identify, because ultimately nonprofits should be very transparent, and we want to be, especially with the donors. Uh, I encourage all of the nonprofits to, really have a very transparent communication, policy with the donors, and make sure, especially when it has to do with their money, that they have, a very clear understanding at all times of what's happening with their donations. I also encouraged, and this is something that I'm going to mention, I hope that people would already do. There are, donation policies that I would hope that nonprofits have in place, and those are set in motion to, standardize how donations are delivered, how funds come into the nonprofit, and how they go out. And by funds, I mean donation specific. So those types of policies should be in place at every nonprofit. And so at the minimum, they should have something that if a donor asks, what is your policy for accepting and receiving donations, that you actually have that in place and can present something to the donor to say, right here, here's my policy. This is what we do for our nonprofit. And that
Mm.
typically would need to be, or may, depending on the hierarchy or the approval process within the organization, that may need to be approved at the board level.
Hmm.
So if this is not in place, then I would definitely encourage you to think about these donor policies, because
Policies and procedures. Yeah.
at a minimum, that is what I would highly suggest get established. And
Yeah.
then enhancing those policies. So if you have the bare minimum in place, then looking at how you can enhance those policies to include more donor engagement. So so that the donor feels like they are part of the process. So part of the process of feeling like they can have a voice in developing part of the donor policy within your organization. And I think that really makes an impact with the donors.
Hmm. So obviously, yes, make sure your foundation is set,
Yes.
because just energetically, we want to be aligned in terms of, yes, the table is perfectly set. Now we can open the door for our party.
Right.
And the same goes true for a nonprofit. We want to make sure all those policies and procedures are in place, that there's a payment portal, a payment methodology so that people can give easily and it goes into a bank account. I mean, I mean, people would be surprised at some of the foundational pieces that are not in place and that really act as energetic blocks
It
when
does.
we're saying, I don't know why people aren't donating. And I'll say, is your bank account set up for the donations to come through? Oh, well, no. And it's kind of like, it's just an energetic freeway that we want to clear so that we can
Yes.
receive those donations easily.
Absolutely. And you have pointed to the energetics of that, as well as when you look at the tangible, when you look at how a donor, I like to talk about it as blockages.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because when a donor looks for ways to support an organization and cannot find ways to do so, that is the number one eliminator of how you will withhold support. And trust me, I have worked with several organizations that I get with, and they wonder, why am I not receiving donations? And I will
Yeah.
say the first thing that I do is I go to the website. So if that is the number one thing I do, is on my intake form, I do ask for the person's website. And that's the first thing that I look at, is the website, to see how how does the website look? How can somebody easily access your donation form?
Hang on one sec.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, great. So yeah, that's one of the first audits you do
Yeah.
as a good partner, is let's just check how easy it is to navigate.
To navigate, I think of it as, I'm a donor and I'm looking at this nonprofit and I want to see how easy it is to, if I'm coming in wanting to make a donation, how easy it is for me to do that.
Yeah.
So I do also have a fundraising health audit that people can take also from my
Right.
website too, that
Wow.
provides them some information as well. Um, that goes way more in depth from just, my visual audit. But yeah, that's the first thing that I look at is how, if I'm a donor and I'm going to somebody's website or I'm going to the internet to go do a random search for this nonprofit, how easy is it going to be for me to one, find them, access them, and how well have they established their presence as a nonprofit, and how dynamic and usable, engaging is their website.
Yeah. Yeah. And to make it modernized too, right? Like really meet people where they are. Don't just have one way. Oh, you have to write a check, which most people are not going to have a check, right, anymore.
Right.
But make sure you have a QR code. Make sure you have a Venmo. Make sure you have a
Yes.
Zelle set up. These kinds of, they sound maybe scarier to some at first, but they're really not that difficult to set up and really worth it to make it easy so people can go, great, where's your QR code? Let me give right now because I'm at this event with you and I want to do it right now. So we
Right.
don't want to miss that, what I call the half-life of enthusiasm. We want to catch it when people are like bringing out their phone and ready to, Apple Pay you.
Right. And I
Yeah.
think so many donations are missed because people don't have those structures in place.
Yeah. So
So,
we are going to drop in the show notes all of Vashti's references that she's making, but I want to highly encourage our listeners, please take advantage of these incredible audits and tools. Vashti has incredible tools that are so well thought out, that are really meant to give you a kickstart, right? So that you can try this on your own, see how you do. And then if things really get hard, that's the time to call Vashti, or even
yeah,
before that, before they get really hard and you want to give up. So make sure, she's giving you free tools to do it yourself. And then when it gets out of reach and you need a thought partner, a sounding board, somebody who's really got your back, then that's the time to call.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I welcome anybody to request any one-on-one assistance as well. And definitely, like I said, the 90-day program is ready for anybody to jump into. And that also comes with coaching calls and additional support as well. So,
Wow. And I know for myself as a solopreneur who is a former lone wolf. I don't know if any of our listeners are lone wolfers who are like, no, I can do this by myself. Absolutely get a coach, somebody who can walk by your side and encourage you. The momentum you get inside a 90-day accelerator is amazing and actually will fuel your months after that because of just the ideas and the amount of information that you'll get for implementation. So I highly recommend it. I've taken Vashti's courses and can't say enough about how they've created momentum in me, but not just like, I always say winners focus, losers spray. I felt like that before I really got clear about I need to really focus my efforts rather than just, oh my God, I need to call everybody and just have a spray approach, which didn't work for me. But a very focused, clear strategy that is tracking your momentum is the way to go.
absolutely. And that's absolutely, that is it, is having a focused strategy that you can track with and having the tools and resources that help you do it.
Now, is one thing that you'll do, this is something that I've seen, is that nonprofits will either, get the proceeds from an event, or they'll a partner, a for-profit company or partner might sponsor an event that then benefits your organization. And one thing
Mhm.
I've noticed is that when you get that time to shine, to go to the microphone, to give the audience a 2-minute overview of what you do and how you do it as a nonprofit, is there any tips you have for people? Because this is something that people go, oh my gosh, I forgot to prepare that part. And this is like, you've got all eyes on you. And so
Mhm.
do you have a structure, or how can people even tell a story their story in just, let's say, 2 to 5 minutes? And how important is that to have that at the ready?
Such a great question because, I haven't even talked about storytelling, and storytelling within the nonprofit sector is one of the most important things that gets highlighted, should be highlighted. I think when I was talking about, finding your North Star and really, creating your foundation, that is really establishing your main story. That is really, defining your mission, defining your goal, and really um, understanding why you're there, what your purpose is, what your goals are. And ultimately, this then defines your story, right? And so then you get your moment to shine. And so then it comes down to, okay, and I would hope that it's not an ad hoc moment where you're like sitting there and somebody says, "Oh, by the way, you're coming up to stage." So I would hope that you get at least a little bit of preliminary time to know about the opportunity, and then would definitely have a moment to be able to collapse your story into that 2 minutes, because you're going to want to talk about the most impactful parts of your foundational mission. You're going to want to express the impacts. So I would say I would recommend talking about the most current impacts that have been made. And I would say the impacts as it relates to whatever funding that particular event or donation was attributed to. So, for instance, you could be there representing your entire nonprofit, right? However, the donation could be for a particular program for your nonprofit. So, those 2 minutes, you want to make sure that you are highlighting the impacts that were made from that program. Not necessarily, you don't want to go into so much about your entire nonprofit. You would want to make sure that you focus heavily on that program that the money was donated to support. And so that would be what I would say, is make sure that you are aligning the where the dollars went to whatever program you was being supported. So when you are using those 2 minutes, that you fill it with the impacts that are the most appropriate for the people in the room to hear.
Yeah. And not to shy away from some of the less attractive details sometimes of that story. I know I just prepped to somebody for Dress for Success for their gala
Yeah.
event, and we talked about, no, let's really put in the story about this woman who we helped, who was living in her car with her child because she was in a domestic abuse situation and had to get out, and now needed new clothes and new
Oh my
interviewing
gosh.
skills and getting back on her feet. And guess what? I mean, like, we had her, we went into the details, right? About, a lot of people can't relate to that experience, but it's like when we went into the details, and then she came out, and of course was amazing
Was
and
she able to
beautiful.
come out?
And oh yeah, she was
She
there.
was
We
there.
got her,
Oh,
we got her story. She was there. She has a job. I mean, and it's like to really see, okay,
yeah.
that's what we're talking about here. And yeah, you may not relate to somebody who's living in her car, but actually when you share those details that are universal, the fear, the dedication to being there for your child, the willingness to go to any length, the willingness to rely on other people for help. And it's just such a beautiful story and a
Oh my
beautiful
gosh.
fundraising event. Yeah.
It just breaks open people's hearts. It opens people's and I mean, it opens people's wallets. It opens, people remember things like that. That's where people
Yes.
go, wow, that is such an impact. Look at that girl went from this to this,
Yeah.
And so it's like those are the types of impactful stories that people go, whoa, this is such, look at that progress. She
Yeah.
went from living in her car, having nothing, to having a job,
Yeah.
having all of these nice clothes to
Having
be
a
able to
house.
work,
Yeah.
having a
Mhm.
house for
Yeah.
her family, and so those are the stories that that is the impact that you want to show. You don't want, yeah,
Mhm.
you definitely don't want to shy away from the stories that can create and show the most impact. And the fact that you were able to bring her out, and of course, with Dress for Success, you can have her there. You
Yeah.
probably had a little bit more time or whatever,
Oh,
but
yeah. Yeah.
to bring somebody out and have them physically there is just an added bonus
Yeah.
because that in itself is going to heighten whatever impact that you're trying to make.
Yeah. Yeah. And so do you help people flesh out kind of like for example, can you share, just a broad category of a nonprofit you're helping, whether it be like healthcare or climate or women
Um,
and children?
yeah, I actually have been working with a organization that is building, it's more of a capital project,
Yeah.
and it is more in the sports and recreation
Great.
arena. And so they are working on a community sports and event center.
Nice.
And so
Yay.
this will establish two additional soccer fields. And obviously, right now we are in the middle of the FIFA
Yeah.
games, and so it is a prime time to be working on this capital campaign because there is a lot of hype around soccer, and so we are trying really hard to maximize that. And this is a good strategy to use.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I like it. It's very real.
Yes. So, maximizing the use of the time, and so that would be looking for capital grants. So right now, the majority of it is looking for large funding grants, which there are some considerable grant funding out there right now for this type of project.
Nice. And so in that example, which is so real and so relatable, and we both would encourage everybody to use examples that are real and relatable,
Yeah.
right? Like planned and canned presentations or examples are sort of out. People don't relate to them. So perfect. In this case, do you help them with understanding and how to uncover the pain of not having a rec center, not having sports fields, not having, do you help them add that
Oh,
kind of sprinkle? Okay, yeah, can you share more?
absolutely. Them as in the people running the
The
project?
capital campaign? Yeah,
Yes. So they are very aware of what it means to not have it within their community. What we have gone through is gathering the info. So we've gone through community. One of the things with the capital campaign, and specifically with some of the larger grants, is you have to go through and ensure that the community is on board with it. And so we've collected community feedback. So that's been a big part of the campaign itself, is to make sure that the community is on board with it. So there's been community questionnaires, and that has been really interesting. The community
I
feedback
bet.
has been a really interesting piece for the planning committee because they have been able to see, not necessarily from me, but from the community, certain aspects of the project that the community wants versus what they thought the community wanted. And I'll give you an example. They had a assumption about like pickleball, and then they realized through the community assessments and through the questionnaires that a lot of people in the community, and they weren't planning on any basketball, but that a lot of people in the community really wanted basketball courts. So, so this is where, as you're going through these community assessments and you're getting all of this information through a capital project, you get, you get information that really can shift how the project goes. And so I try to position it as let's get information. So it's not necessarily coming from just me. I want to get collective feedback.
Right. I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And
Great
then we
example.
can look at it collectively and say, this is what the community wants, and let's look at it this way. And if we need to make changes based off of that, then it's not me coming in and saying,
This is what I
this is
think.
what
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. Which is so important.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, buy-in is such an important part of all of our jobs because it fosters that commitment. So we
Yeah.
want to make sure that it's not, yeah, just, I mean, it makes sense that at a capital campaign at that level, of course, you'd get the community feedback. But
Yeah.
surprisingly, let's say smaller nonprofits might kind of go with the whim of the executive director or the board in terms
Yes.
of what they want to do versus is this really grounded in a strategy that's going to work?
Oh, completely. And
Yeah.
I will say, I I will say, that there is always a way that I have to be very savvy about explaining where the nonprofit thinks they are versus where I end up identifying where they are based off of my audit.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to make that a blanket statement because
Yeah.
I think they come in thinking that they all come in thinking that they're doing better than they are foundationally, structure wise. It all
Mhm.
goes down to the structure.
Yeah.
And what I have found is that, and this is across the board, they can all use better systems.
Yeah. Yeah. That verify our assumptions.
Yes.
And that's where a great coach like Vasheti comes in is that's what you're hired to do is to give them all the feedback, not
Yeah.
just what they want to hear, but also here's where you are now, here's where you're benchmarking, and then here's what we can do to really move your numbers up towards where you really want to be.
Yeah. And let me
Yeah.
just also say that that is at by no fault of their own.
Yeah,
They are
right.
like set up. I mean, the system was set up like this. So they are
Mhm.
put in these situations. And that is why I'm so passionate about helping this population because
Yeah.
they are put in this, the nonprofit, this is how the nonprofit sector is structured.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, and I can see you're on a mission to really change that and to elevate the status of nonprofit, to elevate the impact, and to elevate the leadership skills within it. And so
Yeah.
I really want to thank you. Thank you for your time. And in closing, is there any question I didn't ask you that you were hoping I was going to ask?
I don't think so. I mean, I think one of the things that I'd like to say is that I am really hopeful about the future of fundraising. I think that there is a next generation of donors I'm really excited about. I'm excited about um the questions that the donors are asking, the engagement that they're displaying, and I really love the donors for committing to be more engaged and wanting to know more about what is happening within the nonprofit sector. And I think what that does is it creates more a system of more accountability for nonprofits.
Yeah.
And so I'm really excited about the partnerships that can be established between fundraisers and donors, and really how that can continue to create, how that can continue to evolve, our development departments, and really
Yeah.
from a donor perspective.
Yeah. Because we want to see you in 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 100 years.
Yeah. We want
Yeah.
these relationships to be long term and not just
Yeah.
transactional.
Yes. I
Yeah.
love that. Yeah. So just one more time, will you say your website one more time and we'll drop
Yes.
everything below? Yes.
I can be found on all social channels at Well Balanced CEO.
Wonderful. Yeah. And if you would like tips, strategies, hacks, mindsets, roadmaps, and KPIs and tools to help you move beyond events and really into a solid, sustainable framework for fundraising, definitely check out Vasheti's tools. And I know you also are doing regular masterclasses. Is that right?
Yes, my
Okay.
next one is on the 27th
Of
of
July?
July. Yes,
Okay,
27th of
great.
July.
Great. So that'll be on your website as well?
Yes, it will be. Everything's marketed on my website at wellbalancedceo.com.
Wonderful. All right. Thank you so much, Vashti. So much for your wisdom, your guidance, your care, your tenacity, your dependability, and all the things you bring every day. It really shines through, and we're so grateful to have you.
Thank you, Kendall. This has been
Yeah.
amazing. I appreciate
Great.
you.
Great. Okay. Have a great day, all.